Good afternoon and welcome to this week's Moar workshop video diary. And it's been a good week, this one. It's been a lot of kind of very intricate, fine, detailed work. A lot of work, you know, with my... I've basically been here at this desk. I have a few desks in the shop. Some are for, you know, some are for very rough work with big, powerful, dangerous tools. And this desk here is mainly for, you know, chisels and knives and these little mini planes, actually. These are fantastic. They have curved bottoms. And I got them almost actually as a joke because they came blunt. They were very cheap. They're very sharp now. But I kind of bought them as a joke to cheer up my apprentice that I had at the time. But I love them. I use them more and more. They are so good for these little contours here, and like the heels. I mean, it's not in the shot now, but the you know, the transition from the headstock to the back of the neck. They're brilliant. Anyway, this desk is for this type of tool. I can drop it down like this because it is curved, so the blade is not touching. So yeah, a lot of very fine detail work, making sure that everything is kind of feeling perfect. And I'm in the final stages on around 10 guitars right now that are almost ready to be almost ready. And this is kind of where, you know, I feel that it can be hard to know if a guitar, like a neck, for example, is perfect until quite late on in the process, for me anyway. So I won't do the final profiling of the neck until it's maybe got strings on it. So yeah, I'm kind of there right now. Lots of very little touches, making sure that there's no kind of strange lumps and bumps anywhere. And when they're this kind of smooth, it's quite addictive to touch that. When they're this smooth, like it can be very hard to feel them, but that's kind of what I've been doing this week, and a lot of admin, unfortunately, yeah, but it's been pretty nice. Little, you know, making sure that all the frets are perfect on these guitars, and but yeah, nothing kind of epic, nothing like, you know, look at this wafer I've made. Yeah, but it's I had a lot of questions about, you know, people wanting me to talk about certain things in this week's episode. An interesting one actually was my roasting process when I roast wood, and how I roast wood. And I really like the process of roasting wood. I think it's I think roasted wood is great, actually. When you crystallize the sap, first of all, it gets rid of a lot of the moisture, so you get very low moisture content. You know, you can get down to like 5% or something, 5 or 6%, and then the sap hardens also, and it just means that the wood is a bit more resonant, I think, you know, straight off the bat. It's also very nice to work with. But anyway, my roasting process is quite gradual. I have a few guitars I'm making later on this year, and they have roasted woods. And actually what I like to do is have, basically it's a big oven, a big fan oven with a fan off, and I put them in at quite a low temperature, at least at the start of the day, like around 110, 120, and they'll be in, you know, like let's say a neck blank. I'll put it in, and it'll be in around 110, 120 for about 12 hours. I'll check on it, I'll flip it around, I'll move it around. I'm always looking, you know, if it looks a bit bad, then I'll take it out and I'll see what's going on with it. But what I like to do actually is do that a few times. You know, after you know, in my ovens at that kind of temperature, the wood is not, you know, that heavily roasted. But I think I kind of like the idea of spreading it out over a few months. So I'll do that one day and then I'll take the neck out. I might plane it flat, because also when you roast wood, it moves around quite a lot. So I'll roast it. Chances are it'll be, you know, there'll be a curve, you know, the neck will be bowed. I'll replane it. I'll make sure everything's straight again, and then I'll put it back into the oven maybe a month later. Same process, you know, 12 hours on 110, 120 maybe. And I'll just keep doing that until I have the wood kind of the color and the color and the moisture content that I want. The moisture goes quite quickly. After maybe 1 or 2 sessions, it'll be down to quite a low content. But after maybe four times in the oven, the wood's kind of where I want it. I'm sure it's possible to do it quicker, but I'm not sure if it's possible to do it better. I kind of like the idea of doing things with the wood. I'm going to experiment with wrapping wood in maybe in tin foil in the oven, or I don't know, like maybe just see if that would do something to it. But it's a very, the back of my head thought process where I took a piece of wood out of the oven once and thought, I wonder what would happen if you coated this in tin foil before we put it in the oven. I may never do it. That's basically it. It's quite a slow process the way I do it, but I love it. It's really it's great. What else has been people asking about? Oh yeah, body contours. My good friend Dave asked about, who actually has a Moar guitar. He wrote me asking about body contours and why I think handmade is so important. Body contours they've kind of become my thing. But kind of by accident. I think that it's just a much more comfortable guitar. Whenever I pick up it's very rare now that I pick up a guitar that isn't one of my own, because I'm here all the time. But I'm so shocked when you have this big slab of wood. It just wasn't designed for the player at all. I mean, they weren't thinking, we have bodies and arms and things should kind of fit, right? I mean, it's like, so I think that's why I think contours are important. I mean, it's so simple to get these things to fit you, so why not do it? I think, and also like a more comfortable instrument, you're more likely to play a lot more. I think if you have a rack of guitars, you're most likely to pick up the one, I think anyway, or the one that sounds the best, but also one that's like light and comfortable, because it's comfortable. It's nice. It's good to have on. Whereas these big old heavy things. I know that there's like a common myth of like heavy guitars having better sustain. It's total nonsense. I can find you a ton of really heavy guitars that sound more dreadful. And then handmade, why is that important? I think that's a very tricky one to answer, because of course it would be possible to imitate most things with a CNC machine. There are some things that hands can't do that a CNC machine can do. I do a bit of both. I do own a CNC machine. It's fantastic for doing, fret slots, pickup cavities, control cavities, that type of thing. It's things that, nobody cares if your frets are cut by hand. Also, the cool thing with CNCing fret slots is you can CNC the curve of the fret so that the bottom of the tang is totally seated in the neck, and that makes a little bit of difference. Rather than having, if you do it by hand, you just do it with a saw, and I have one up there. You just cut it in straight, whereas if you do it with the CNC, you can actually cut the curve of the radius into the bottom of the fret slot so that the frets are seated really, really nicely. I don't know how much difference that makes, but at least these little things. So handmade, I think you can. For me, it's more flexible. I get a lot of my orders are very custom. It would be possible to do a new CNC program for everything that I made, but it would be so annoying. I mean, I have an order coming in where the nut width, is I think 46 millimeters for a guitar. Now I can do that by hand easily. I mean, it's not easy, but I can just do it. Whereas if I wanted to program, if I was relying solely on the CNC machine to do that, it would be really annoying. I mean, also that's another thing with the CNC. It's really annoying to work with. I mean, the amount of prototypes you have to do to get the one that's kind of correct, it's just no fun for me anyway. So handmade for me, but I think also when you are, I feel like you respect the wood a little bit more when you're working by hand, and you can kind of follow the contours of the wood. It's a little bit kind of more natural. My hands, or my CNC machine doesn't really care. Oh, hang on. My CNC machine doesn't really care about how the grain of a certain piece of wood looks. Whereas for me, if I see a certain thing, you know, if I want to place something exciting, you know, on the belly cut or something, I can do that obviously very easy by hand. I think also my necks are very, very shaped to my hands and to the hands of my clients, and that's something I can kind of adapt to on the fly. So I guess Handmade, in terms of guitars, is only relevant to a certain point, but I think it just makes things a bit more adaptable. Yeah, so that's a tough one, because of course there are fantastic CNC made guitars. I think a blend of both Handmade and CNC is actually pretty perfect. I think, you know, if I was to hand saw I have done hand sawn fretboards, you know, fret slots, and it's just no fun. I wouldn't want to be a professional guitar builder if I did them all like that. Does a thicker neck make better tone? This is of course a bit of a contentious issue, and I have done. You know, last year in 2020, I had a few guitars ordered with really chunky necks, like almost like, you know, don't take off any material from the back, just kind of round the corners of the neck blank. So really, really, really big necks. And there was a certain feel to them. There was definitely a different feeling. I don't know whether there was a different sound, whether there was a better sound, or whether there was I mean, there's kind of two sides to it. I mean, the strings create like the vibration, right? And then that goes into the wood. And you can see from one perspective that the less wood there is, the more that wood the more effect the energy of the strings can have on the wood, if you understand. Like if you have if you imagine like a concrete block of something and there's something vibrating on top of it, that's not going to move at all. Whereas if you have a piece of paper and there's a thing vibrating on top of it, the paper would move. So keeping that in mind, thinking about necks, you would think that a thinner neck would actually resonate a little bit better. And so that's kind of where my head's at. But there is definitely a kind of snappier, and that's a very, like, I hate words like that because it doesn't really mean anything, but there is definitely a different feel to chunkier necks, like a slightly quicker response, or people are going to hate me for saying this because it sounds, you know, if I say like it has a meaty feel or something, it doesn't really mean anything, but there is definitely a different feeling. Like, of course, the neck physically feels different, but there is a something to it of a chunky neck, a directness to the sound. It's very, very hard to put your finger exactly on. It's also very hard to talk about sound, you know, because it's so subjective. But I think people that have played necks kind of will know what I mean. It's tricky, that. I think there is. Yeah, I don't know. So do larger necks make better tone? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. It's a different feeling to the sound. What's my favourite finish is an oil finish. I have my own kind of blend of oils. About 5 different oils go onto my guitars, and actually wax at the very end of it. Yeah, so it's a very long, slow, arduous process of maybe, kind of, depending on the wood and how much oil the wood soaks up, somewhere between 20 and maybe 50 sometimes. I have one Wenge bass that has more than 50 coats of oil on, very thin coats of oil, like extremely thin, like a teaspoon or a tablespoon of oil onto a cloth, and that will cover the whole instrument. It's a very slow process, but yeah, basically that. I call it the Moar magic oil process.